And I think my children really helped me with that, with all the different neurodiversities we had in the home, of really stopping and listening. Like one of my sons has sensory processing. So when he was little, I'm thinking, come on, hurry up, put your shoes on, let's go, let's get in the car, we're going to be late. And with the sensory processing, he is having the hardest time putting his shoes on and throwing a fit, and I have to stop, get on his level and say, hey, what's going on? Finding out that the crease inside his sock was bothering him so much, he couldn't put his shoe on, right? Or his dyspraxia, the fine motor skills, he couldn't tie his shoe fast enough when his siblings were, hurry up, go. And then he's looking at them almost like, why can't I coordinate my hands to do this? And instead of getting upset, overreacting, hurry, 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 let's go, because everybody's in a hurry, it seems. It's getting down, literally, physically getting down on their level, their eye level, and saying, hey, what's going on? How can I help you? Not what's wrong with you or why are you taking so long? How can I help you? What can I do in this situation to help? And then have that flow of communication. So they taught me a lot about patience and really understanding, because at their age, what I'm thinking is not what they're thinking, right? It's the age difference. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, at the north end of Lake Washington, and I just struggled in school constantly. Now, I will admit my age, I'm 49. So back then, there wasn't many resources, many interventions, and I kind of just went through school struggling with everything, and no one could figure anything out. There wasn't much testing, and so I just kind of went through the system and failing and not being able to read very well, trying to mask and hide myself in the classroom, like, please don't call on me. That was my biggest fear. And and it just didn't work well. In 11th grade, they tested me, and they didn't necessarily say dyslexia, just a learning disability, as I was coming in at a 7th grade level at the time. So in my senior year of high school, they put me in special ed classroom, which back then was a whole different room, different wing in the way back. I barely graduated with a 2.1 and just thought I was never going to make it. I was told that by teachers, family members, that I wouldn't amount to anything. And so I didn't think I could ever go to college. 4 years of generations of my family went to the University of Washington, and I was the first not to go. But I just couldn't get in. What I enjoyed was cooking. And so I went into culinary school, and that's where a new light shined, because I could do what I loved, but the dyslexia still affected me in culinary school as well. So that's a little bit about the early history of where
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. What was the kind of the pressure that you felt in that such early age? Like you said, you were so many generations that had gone to, college, university beforehand, and that you were kind of just struggling to get in. How did you kind of manage that? Because I can imagine that was you probably put
Not
a lot
well.
of pressure on yourself.
Not well. I really put myself down. I really, really believed I was lazy and stupid, because I didn't know any better, and that's what I'd heard for so long of my life. I couldn't, I couldn't pass I could barely pass my classes, CDs. I failed quite a few classes. I couldn't do language classes at all. I think the only things I did well in was home economics and computers. So typing, we had typing classes back then. And sports. I loved sports. I loved to do sports. But other than that, It was humiliating, and I just felt I'm really never going to amount to anything.
So was it quite kind of a sheer relief when your kind of school period was over?
It was a huge relief. But then when I went to culinary school, I struggled then too. And I thought, oh no, here we go again. Because school was so hard for me. I had to work twice as hard as everyone else, even though no one saw that. And I didn't understand why I had to work twice as hard, how I could read a book 5 times or, the history chapter or something and not remember what I just read. That didn't make any sense to me. And so I just really thought that there was something wrong with me, but I had nowhere to go for help. I didn't have my mother or the school. And so I was a very quiet, shy child. And I hid behind the scenes because I didn't want to be noticed. I didn't want to be called on. I didn't want to be asked questions because also with my dyslexia, neurologically, I can think of everything in my head perfectly, like, 5 years in advance. But to get it out and articulate it's so much harder.
So during that kind of that period, you just want, like you said, normally in high school, in secondary school, when we talk about the UK, it's kind of you just want to sort of fly under the radar. But that's definitely how you felt, that you didn't want to in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And that must have been really quite suppressing in a way.
Yes.
What was it? When did you kind of when you kind of school was very difficult, and then you said you went to culinary school, and then you felt like you were going through the same process again. What was the process after that? When did it feel like something had changed and you thought, actually, now I'm thriving or in that way? What was the next stage after culinary school?
It was in culinary school. What happened was anything dealing with my hands, right, or visual or creating these dishes, or even, even to this day, I can, make 5 things at once with no timers. And by my smell or by the sight, I know it needs 28 more minutes or it needs, 10 more minutes. I can cater for 500 people and see the whole vision in my head. But sitting and reading a book and finishing a book is like gut wrenching, right? It's like, let me cater for 500 people instead of reading a single book. And that sounds funny, but it's just how my brain works. And so in culinary school, when I had to start reading recipes and learning the steps, especially in baking with the breads and the pastries, it has to be specific. And I kept messing it up. And I didn't understand why I kept messing it up. And so one of my teachers said, have you ever heard of dyslexia? And I'm like, no. And so I looked into it. I talked to my doctor about it. And that's kind of when but still for so long of my life at that point, I had lived, in masking and shaming myself. And I'm like, could it be? But maybe not. Maybe that's just an excuse, right? And so I go back and forth and back and forth.
What was that kind of that period? I guess when you talk about catering for that many people, my goodness, there's probably people listening to this, me in included. That's sheer fear. How did you get was it just because you just felt like you came into your own in an environment that you could control?
And I love people. I love food and I love people. And I saw how it became a passion. I started as a personal chef, so I would be one-on-one with people in Seattle, which was very exciting because I love to personalize things for people. And then people wanted me for this event and this event and this event. So it kind of grew. And I did that in Seattle for a while. But I've come to find that food and people, when they come together, it breaks down the barriers of culture. It includes everyone. Everyone can just eat and talk and so I felt that environment was most comfortable for me because it didn't matter who you were, what age you were, what religion you believed. You can come together and enjoy food. And so that's where I found serenity and peace was amongst food. So
no,
I still do.
Absolutely, it's so beautifully put. I always mentioned that the most powerful and incredible place within a home for me personally is the table that we all dine on, because it's the time that you, no matter how busy your lives are, at some point during the week when you come together and you can kind of just eat and talk and share how your day's going, or sometimes just sit there in silence, but genuinely, and the food does the talking. So I completely relate to that wholeheartedly, that it has a sort of a magical connection with us all.
Mm-hmm.
What so when you were kind of so when did you discovered that your dyslexia, what kind of age was that? Was it later on in life then that your
It was,
dyslexia?
yeah, it was about mid-20s. And then I started to become a mom. And for me, that to me, that was the most important thing for me, because I wasn't very close to my mom. So I knew at a very young age, most importantly, any career, anything in the world, I wanted to be the best mother I could be. And so at that time frame, I started becoming a mother. And so I dedicated, the past 25, 6, 7, 27 years to doing that. And now my youngest is 14, and I've expanded to what I'm doing now, which we can talk about later. But that's where my next dedication came, especially as I kept having children. 4 of them are neurodiverse. And as a mother, I had to advocate. I couldn't hide, and I couldn't let the same things happen to them that happened to me.
How did you get to that stage where you felt that you were, because that it's very brave in a way that we are able to kind of stand out and stand, put our head above the parapet and start talking about the our differences, I guess. Was it because your children, or was it that point you said, actually I really need to kind of start talking about this more? What was that kind of pinnacle point?
It was more because of my children. I still, at that point, even later in life, into my 30s, 40s, I still didn't really stand up for myself, because I still had that old code in my head from when I was younger of, you really are stupid. You really are not enough. You're not going to amount to anything. And so, but for my children, I'm like, they're never going to think that way, right? I'm going to do whatever I can and fight for them, and get up in front of Congress, wherever I have to fight. And then as they got older, and we've transitioned some into college, and I think they're they're everywhere in the world. And so I have to go fight for all the kids, all the neurodiverse kids in the world. And so that's where I'm at now. But it is my kids that gave me the strength to fight in a whole different light, and realize that our experiences, our hardships, our pain actually can be turned into beautiful life lessons. And we can take that pain and make choices to go, instead of harden our hearts, we can go and help other people who are struggling through the exact same things. And that's just not with neurodiversity, it's with everything. And so, since I love people so much and I want to constantly help, I've turned that, lots of therapy, I will add, therapy is great, will add into how can I take all these heartaches and turn it into strength so that I can help just another person.
Absolutely, and it's a beautiful gift that you can give to someone to be able to do this. How do you make sure that you're still looking after yourself, because you give so much to so many people? How do you make sure that you're able to make sure you're looking after yourself?
I have a Siberian Husky who I love dearly, and who is just my love. For me, it's hard for me to just sit down and relax. I'm not the type of person to go to the spa, which, I mean, that's nice. But to me, if I'm idle, I'm like, okay, I need to be doing something. I need to be, helping the kids. I need to be doing this or doing that. And so it's hard for me. So for me, actually, um, it's kind of a joke when my family knows when I'm stressed a lot, when I start baking a lot. And so it's like I'll have to give stuff to the neighbors because they'll be like, "Are you stressed?" And I'll be baking, 3, 4 things right at a time. But that actually brings me peace. I find peace back in cooking, which I know cooking stresses people out sometimes, but for me, it's a way. That's my escape. I'm thinking about the way the bread is going to be shaped, or the way I'm going to saute this, or the smells and I'm thinking about that instead. What books I do love, which I have hundreds, are cookbooks, and I actually read those, and I love those. I try to walk. I love nature. I love nature so much. I love the rain, believe it or not, growing up in the Northwest. And so if I can take walks and flowers and the beauty of nature, and I just try to remember that. But I need to do better at it because I work so hard for everybody else. I tend to forget, and then I remind myself when I see my kids doing the same thing that I need to set a better example. So that grounds me also.
Well, I think it's wonderful because for people listening that are continuously giving and working really really hard, it's always great to understand from a different perspective of how people are kind of taking care of themselves as well as the giving side. Because like you said, you do give so much in that sense. What with regards to kind of sorry,
and
please
I
go on.
swing dance. My husband and I swing dance, and that is a good outlet. So we learned how to swing dance, and it's really fun because even in the grocery store, when the old jazz music comes on, like my youngest son will not go grocery shopping with us anymore because we'll just break out in the middle of the produce aisle, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I do not know these people."
I think that's brilliant. I think that's living in the moment, and
Exactly.
obviously being able to be creative. Would you? I would probably say that if listening to what you do, you're a very creative person. Is that something that you would say yourself,
Oh
or?
yeah, absolutely. If that's one word, it would be creative. I have been my whole life, whether it's art and music and anything with my hands. But I'm be able to do an event for 500 people. I also went to floral design school, so I learned how to do floral arrangements on a massive level, and every detail of everything. I can see detail that most people can. I can walk in a room and not creepily, but scan the room and notice little details about people, about the interiors, about everything. And I can just absorb that in my brain. And when I was little, I thought there was something weird with me. But as I have become older, I realize that's actually a gift. I can really notice details. That's another thing about how I can relate to people so much is um, anyone young, old, rich, poor, it doesn't matter who you are, how much money you have. Those things don't matter to me. What matters to me is a genuine thing inside your heart. And I can relate to that person at their level by one, listening. Listening is so important. We don't listen enough. We just react, or we want to boast ourselves, or we want ourselves to hear ourselves, right? That's not how I relate to people. It's listen to them, see what's important to them, see what problems they're going through. So whether I'm talking to parents, teachers, children, um, Congress, anything political, foreign dignities, it's something matters to them, and it may not be. I may go into, say, El Salvador and to the embassy and talk to them, and what I think is important to that country is not. And so I let them tell me instead, and then we have a conversation around that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely beautifully put.
Mhm.
And I think in a world where there's so much distraction, so much noise and busyness, to actually give the gift of being able to listen and as you so beautifully put, really listen is a real gift for someone. I was at an event a few weeks ago, and we did this podcast, and we were just talking to the exhibitors and the guests around neurodiversity and things, and one of the things they've said is it was beautiful for 20 minutes to just have someone to listen. and genuinely listen, and not for any other reason but just to listen. I can completely relate to that. But when you said that, it's so important, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think it's something that we don't do enough. And I guess it's something that we generally will start a conversation sometimes with not the intention of really wanting to listen what the conversation was, maybe our agenda or maybe the busyness, maybe these different things are happening. But I do think that's a gift. And I think the key is, as you've mentioned, to understand what it is that, what problems they have. As you said, you go into an embassy, and I guess we go with our own agenda of what it is that we want to talk about, and then suddenly it can just fall on deaf ears. So it's that moment of just opening the line of questioning and then receiving what it is that they're doing. So beautifully put.
And I think my children really helped me with that, with all the different neurodiversities we had in the home, of really stopping and listening. Like, one of my sons has sensory processing. So when he was little, I'm thinking, come on, hurry up, put your shoes on, let's go, let's get in the car, we're going to be late. And with the sensory processing, he is having the hardest time putting his shoes on and throwing a fit. And I have to stop, get on his level and say, hey, what's going on? Finding out that the crease inside his sock was bothering him so much, he couldn't put his shoe on, right? Or his dyspraxia, the fine motor skills, he couldn't tie his shoe fast enough when his siblings were, hurry up, go. And then he's looking at them almost like, why can't I coordinate my hands to do this? And instead of getting upset, overreacting, hurry, 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 let's go, because everybody's in a hurry, it seems, it's getting down, literally physically getting down on their level, their eye level, and saying, hey, what's going on? How can I help you? Not what's wrong with you or why are you taking so long? How can I help you? What can I do in this situation to help? And then have that flow of communication. So they taught me a lot about patience and really understanding, because at their age, what I'm thinking is not what they're thinking, right? It's the age difference. But same with adults. And going into other countries and stuff, what they need isn't what I think they need, and vice versa. And that's why it's so important to listen.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that, because that is absolutely key. Because, you mentioned, the school run in the morning or something could be, pressure and you're trying to get to work or that trying to get to school and the busyness of everything else is going. But to have that moment of stopping and understanding how they at that point in time see the world and how the struggles that they have and that communication, and that can be put into all aspects of our life, can't it?
Yeah.
Can we go into kind of the incredible work that you're doing now? What inspired you? Tell me a little bit about Einstein's Advocates and what inspired you to create this.
So what happened about 15 years ago is I realized that I needed to go back to school. There were some personal reasons in my life why I needed to. I felt I had to go. But for me to go back to school is like the biggest fear. Some people fear the dentist. Well, I actually fear the dentist too, or the doctor or kids with the needles. Mine was going back to school because it would bring back all those feelings of being inadequate. And what if I fail? What if I fail? So all this fear. But I knew that for a better future for my children, for my family, I needed to have a college degree, and I needed to try for myself. And so at first it was hard. So I went back to community college because, again, I barely graduated. So I couldn't get to any universities. And I started back in early childhood education because I thought I'll become a teacher, try to help kids the way that I needed to be helped, though I still didn't know what that looked like. And I can be off when my kids are off, during Christmas break and things like that. Because again, I didn't want to go back to work, but I thought if I needed to, I wanted to at least spend as much time with the kids as possible. And so I slowly went back, and then it got to the point where I needed to apply for school. my bachelor's degree, and my husband encouraged me to apply to the University of Washington. Well, that was another terrifying thing because, as you remember, I broke that tradition a long time ago with my family, with with the generations going to the University of Washington. And I applied, and they took 15 students for the program that year, and I got accepted. And it's because I worked so hard to get my grades up, and other things that I was working on. And so I did that. And so I'll be graduating this year from University of Washington, and then applying to graduate school. But for me to do that, every day is still hard. Every day the homework is still 2-3 times as long. And so I realized I needed to set an example for my kids, especially the ones who are neurodiverse, that anything is possible. You just have to work. Some of us have to work extra hard, but it's still possible. And so, Einstein Advocates was thought about, not in a boardroom, but at the kitchen table amongst a stack of IEPs and tiers and research papers. And I'm like, how can I help all these other kids? There has to be more. And so in the United States school system, I really struggled a lot with some of my kids of not getting the supports we needed. My youngest son, we were in Missouri, and it was in 5th grade. He was having some challenges with reading, and I went to the school, and they told me that I needed to get him tested. So I had a psychoeducational evaluation done. And then he had dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia severely. And that was the first time we heard this. And that was at that point, I'm like, okay, I got to step up my game. I got to put my armor on and start fighting because they would not recognize it as a learning disability. So now I was at the point where I needed to fight the school district for breaking 2 federal laws, or spend the money to get him into a private school, because now it was about his self-esteem, which I completely understood because I went through the same thing. And to me, it was more important that I help his self-esteem and help him achieve than try to fight the system. But in the back of my head, I thought, I have to fight the system someday, but right now I need to help my son, right? And so I applied to 17 schools nationwide in the U.S., and he got into one in Texas, Rosalynn Saunders School, dyslexia school. And in 2 years he was there, 2 years, 7th and 8th grade, he went up 6 grade levels. 6. Because his brain was finally open to the way it could learn the math, the English. And he was always brilliant, and so then I thought, okay, this is possible. How can I keep fighting for more kids? And so what can I do? What can I do academically? What can I do legislatively? What could I do at all these different levels? And that's what has created. And I've had people say, you're doing too much. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm not doing enough. I think of what I would have wanted for my kids, what I would have wanted for myself, and that's what we're doing. So we advocate, and I help advocate worldwide for other countries. I do professional training for teachers, families. I help kids learn how to advocate. I'm helping universities establish neurodiversity centers or places on campus. The University of Washington just got a $15 million grant to do that specifically on campus, because these kids grow up, and then what? Okay, we push them to college. Well, good luck. And then what happens? No, they keep needing help. And so my kids, as they've started college, I've seen that. Where are the resources on campus? So it's working with different universities. It's is writing a children's book series that I'm writing for. It's a chapter book for kids so that they can go to a library, pull a book out, and like, oh my gosh, I think like this. You know, I have this characteristic, and feel normal, I guess, because that's something I never felt was normal. And so there's so many things. It really comes back to my kids who have inspired me to someone's got to fight. And I never thought it could be me because, again, I hid in the shadows. Even when being a chef, you hide in the kitchen, right? You pay people to go, you know, I've made everything look beautiful. I can create everything, but I'm still behind the scenes. But now I have to stand out. And it's started out as fearful, but actually every single time it's the one thing I don't get nervous about anymore because I'm so passionate about it. And I just do it. I just go and do.
We are incredibly lucky that you do that, and it's an incredible gift to give to people to be able to, you know, to help as many people as you do. How I was blown away when you said about the you know, when your son kind of, you know, went up so many different stages. How important then would you say that throughout all of things, the environment for an individual? How important is the right environment?
Oh, it's critically important. And, you know, we have this, and I'm learning about how school systems are designed across the world. But in the States, we kind of have one system. And the thing is, it's not one size fits all. You know, it's like when you go to the store and you see a cute sweater or something or a hat, and it's like one size fits all. No, you may have a smaller head, you may have a bigger head. And it's not one size fits all. We have this, you know, just go through the test scores, just go through the things. But so many children don't learn like that. And if we can understand how they learn, how the brain works, and try to get early intervention as early as possible. That's why I went into early childhood education, because how the brain is developing in those years from conception until 6 years old is absolutely fascinating. And the neuroplasticities that are happening and growing and changing during those first 6 years, it's more than any other time in your life. Any other time in your life. And so, you know, countries who you learn multiple language in elementary school or primary school, that is the time to learn it. But it's also the time to try to figure out the delay. What is the delay? And that's the program that we're working with, the AI Dyslexia app, which we can talk about later. But where's the delay? What's happening? And how can we get that early intervention as soon as possible?
Absolutely, and that's really fascinating. The first 6 years of a child's life, you know, you always think that the you know, the child's just learning to, I don't know, speak and walk and all of these basic things, but you don't realize how much that they're able to kind of absorb and take in. It's truly fascinating when you really kind of dive into that, you know, the nuance and the science behind it.
Right. My oldest son, that's when I really wanted to understand the science behind it. And science is hard for me, but I love it. I love the science. And when he was 4 years old, he could only speak 5 words. And my daughter, who was older, you know, by 2 years old, she was speaking complete sentences. So I was very confused. I'm like, what's happening here? And as a mother, I'm like, what did I eat? What did I do wrong? But because we do that. We put that upon ourselves. And it shouldn't be that way. And so, you know, at first he was diagnosed with autism. You know, your son has autism. So here's a prescription and, you know, good luck. And of course, not knowing anything, because this was my first child, who I'm like, well, what do you mean? What's autism? What are these words you're telling me? And so I dug into research as much as I didn't like to read. But again, I had to understand, what are these words they're telling me? And so I researched and researched, and I said, I don't think he has autism. I think he has characteristics, but not autism where he needs medication every day. And so he was eventually reevaluated by a psychiatrist, and was ADHD and sensory processing. And and we worked through that. That was very challenging for sensory processing. The best way to explain is he was my little Superman. All his senses were heightened like 5 times ours. So taste, smell, sight, hearing. We couldn't go to a movie theater until he was about 13 because it was too overstimulating, right? He only ate about 15 foods because the textures and stuff. But again, when back then, he's 22 now, and it's like, what's wrong with your child? Why won't he eat this? He's such a picky eater. You know, you hear all this stuff and you realize you just have to shut that out, because it's easy to take the negativity and put it upon yourself, but you have to focus on, what am I doing best for my child? And so now he is studying in Japan. He's doing 6 months abroad. He's learning Japanese. He's in a Tokyo where, and again, he still has sensory processing. He still has ADHD. It still has so much anxiety, but he's doing it. He got on the plane and went. He lives with a host family. So going to a new environment, a different kind of toilet, a different kind of shower, everybody looks different. You know, he's 6'4". Nobody's 6'4". He has a red beard, right? Totally sticks out. He's eating different foods, and he'll send me pictures, curry and all this stuff. This little boy who wouldn't even, touch anything, right? And so it's learning from their experiences, and then taking and doing more research in my studies and helping other people to help their children as they grow too.
It must make you feel incredibly proud to see this. I mean, that's that's phenomenal.
But it also makes me also think that it doesn't stop once they graduate high school. No. So like he gets there, and and I know he won't mind me explaining this, but the overwhelmingness of, you just don't get into a car. Mom doesn't drop you off at school. Mom doesn't have all your meals, because you take care of the things aren't the same as in the States, and you're away from home. And it was so overwhelming getting to the train station, getting downtown Tokyo to your class, finding the class, all these things, and the language is different. All the signs are different. And one day he was so overwhelmed. It was about week 3 in, and he was trying to get to the train station. And I said, okay, remember when you were little and you had to clean your room? The same anxiety is still there. It's so overwhelming. And we picked one thing. Okay, go pick up your trains and put them away. Don't look at the whole mess. Go put your dirty clothes and grab them and put them in the laundry. And slowly, and I said, do the same thing. Find the train station, to get on the train, find the money that you figure out the money you have to pay, all the steps you need to do to get into school. You're at school, you can take a deep breath, find lunch. Okay, you have to go out, and all these little steps, right? But take it back to when you were a child and you had to clean your room. And so he started doing that every day. And now, he's 2 months in, and he's like, oh yeah, it's no problem, and he took the bullet train to Kyoto and having a blast. But he needed help getting over that hump, even at 22 years old. But it went back to what we did when he was little.
Absolutely. And I think like you said, it goes back to that kind of coming down to the level, doesn't it? Which you beautifully elaborated earlier. It's kind of, when you said, it could just be the lining in a sock, or it could be the tying of the lace. It's actually, okay, break this down.
Yes.
What does this look like? And I think that, as you've mentioned, it just goes through all of these different scenarios that you can kind of do when you just stop and you listen and you have that conversation.
Yeah.
I'd love to kind of know a little bit more. So you're developing an open source AI tool, and you're working on this. We touched on this just now. Could you tell us a little bit more about this?
So The AI app, the reason why, well, fortunately enough, I'm not a tech person. AI is way over my head. And of course, everybody hears everything about negative or good or bad about AI. And again, it's just like my research with the kids and with when they were diagnosed with, all the different things. It's like, okay, I can hear what everybody else is hearing, but I got to do the research for myself. Right. And so I dug into it and I'm like, okay, it can be used for good and some people will use it for bad. But that's just like with almost anything. Since the dawn of time, people will modernize something and it can be used for bad, but it can be used for good. And so the thing is, dyslexia is everywhere. And so what we're trying to do is do a open source AI model, just a free dyslexia app off through Moodle, which we chose Moodle because it's so many have it. Schools have it. But what it will do is it doesn't diagnose dyslexia. It lets the teacher know that there's a possible delay. So first, what we have to do is we have to train the model first. We have to train the AI model, and how we do that is we look at writings, uh, writings and readings from ages 6 to maybe 14 of people who are dyslexia and people who are not, children, both, and write that into the training model. And so what can happen is eventually a child will be in there typing, writing something, trying to read different things, or even the speech, if they're reading out loud, and it can detect that this may not be average. This may not be. There may be, I guess I call it a flag, and so nobody can see what's happening except for the teacher and the student. So the teacher can see it, or the school district, and then it alerts them that, okay, there may be a delay. So let's get the school in and have them diagnosed. Once that happens, and if they are diagnosed, then they can continue to work on this model to read books and whatever, and provide like speech to text, text to speech, all these different things. They can change the font size, they can change the lettering, the spacing between the letters to make it easier for the child to read. And it can also, eventually the model will track the pupil dilation and the way the eye movement is, so that when they are reading, because unfortunately I'm on the old school books. I love the old smell of books. If I can have a real book, I'd take it any day. But so much is online now, especially for kids and in the US, that they're reading anyway. So when they're reading, it's tracking it and it's saying, okay, is it going faster? Is it going slower? Let's change that font style. Let's try to have their eyes adjust a little bit better. And so, but first we have to train the model to do that. Then we're going to implement it into a few school districts in the United States, and hopefully in the UK, and eventually it will be free, worldwide, and we can put it in different languages as well.
That's incredible, and so well needed. And I think the advancement of AI is definitely increased. I've kind of known about it for quite some time. I mean, AI has been around for many years, but obviously to actually be able to access it for ourselves, with ChatGPT coming in, and there's so many different things, and you're absolutely right. It can be used for good and for not so good. But I've seen so many advancements that are positive, especially for, dyslexic people, and the use of it is and I think this is the beauty of it, is someone is taking something like AI and gone, actually, how can we work with this and create something for good, and help people? And I think that's the beauty of it. AI gets a bad rep in the sense that they say, actually, now people become lazy because they're not writing, they're just using things like ChatGPT or something to do all of the writing. But what I found a lot of times, and when I speak to a lot of people around kind of people, let's just say people with dyslexia, is the creativity of how to utilize and use that tool. It's been phenomenal to hear the stories of how they're utilizing that. And I think that's the future, of not just using it as a crutch to
Right.
to do everything. It's how can I work with this?
Right. And I think it's important to understand also, as I am, I may have mentioned this before, but my husband is a CEO of an AI company. And so that's how I understand better of what's happening. But, it's really important to understand the difference between open source and closed source AI. Information that you're writing on your company's platform, your school's platform, is your information. If it's closed source, it's not, and other people can get that information. It's evolving so quickly, so fast. I mean, weekly, it's changing and changing. So even starting, I'm realizing as I was in this conference in Oxford this past few days, we need to start implementing some policies in Congress or places so that we can make sure that there are ethics, that there are, because the thing is, people are going to use it for bad. And so how can we protect the children, the students? How can we prevent that laziness or the cheating? How can we do that? But we have to move as fast as the AI is developing. And so having a niche into that, it helps. But as I develop these different apps, which just won't be the only one, I'd love to do one for dyscalculia, for math and stuff. But it's not replacing the teachers at all. That's specifically what I do not want to do, because you cannot replace the human interaction, the human teaching. It's giving the teacher and the students a tool to improve themselves better, to help for an example, I'll give you another app I want to try to create is, say, I have a students, I'm a teacher, and I have 27 students in my class. Well, I have one ADHD, one with autism in my class, and the rest are neurotypical. But I want to write a lesson plan, but how am I going to keep them all engaged, right? So I could spend a week writing lesson plans. I could write one for the ADHD, for the autism, for the neurotypical. But instead, I want to develop an app where they can write in what they want, what goes with the standards of the school, meaning what they have to do as far as testing, or as far as regulation of what the lesson needs to be, and have it automatically create a lesson plan to include everyone in the class to keep them engaged. And then that saves so much time for that teacher, right? But it still includes everyone, the ADHD, the autism, and all the neurotypical students. Because that's when I've done my practicums and my student teachings in class, that's hard to see. They will have maybe a second teacher in class working with another student, but then they still aren't engaged, right? And there's no perfect solution, but it's just trying. What else can we try?
Absolutely. Now, I think that's the beauty of it, isn't it? What you've done there effectively is talked about inclusivity, and you're using AI to be able to help, to work with this. So I think that's, and I think you're absolutely right. It is evolving, and it does seems to be speeding up and up and up and up. And I think if we understand it and utilize it, that's great. But we do need to, obviously some form of regulations in there. I think in the UK now we've just been they've just started to talk about that they are going to be bringing AI lessons into the educational into education in the UK, along with a couple of other things, which is a big step to what they were doing before. So it'll be interesting how that pans out and plays. If you could, if I could just, sorry, please go on.
No, go ahead.
If you could speak directly to neurodivergent learners, okay, I just want to educators and parents right now. What would you want them to remember?
Honestly, and this is something I shared in Oxford, stories, start with your story. Like, what you do is remarkable. You have to start with stories. Stories build empathy. And then systems they build change. So So I look at it as storytelling moves your heart, right? Policy and advocacy moves institutions. Children's book, like the one I'm trying to write, it helps young learners realize that they can be their own heroes, that their minds are just as beautiful as everybody else's. As parents and teachers, as we do more training, as we do more research of our own, it builds more understanding and resilience. And then you add a little spice of technology, and it gives educators a tool to make inclusion real. And so it's almost like a recipe, right? And so that's my recipe card almost. And you know, that is why I founded Einstein Advocates. And it's incorporate all of this together like a recipe. And, you know, you can't have the bread without the yeast. Well, some breads without the yeast, you know. You can't just use salt without, you know, baking, you know, you have to have the right recipe to make this, to do the change, to help it, and it all matters. And so to parents, first of all, you're not alone, and you did nothing wrong, and there is help, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to create outlets too. We're trying to create an online store where parents can go and be like, okay, I've never heard what sensory processing is. Well, what is that? And they can find the book. They can find a fidget toy that helps with ADHD. They can find children's books that may help, games that help. So for an example, I know I'm talking so much, and I find this in places like El Salvador or Kenya, where technology isn't possible in some of the outer lining areas, is bringing in games. So those old school memory games as a kid, you know, matching the mouse and the dog and the dog, those games, simple games, are actually helping the part of the brain that's working with memorization, which is helping with when we have to memorize our multiplication tables in school. So it's helping with the kids who may have dyscalculia, which sometimes is diagnosed later when you're learning your multiplication tables. But if we're playing these games when they're little, games Scrabble, apples to apples, and if we can get them into foreign languages to help those kids too, then they're doing something. The parents are still doing something without technology. So it's providing that both. On both skills.
So I've been working alongside Promova for quite some time now, and we put together an incredible course to help to raise more awareness around neurodiversity in the workplace. So please do check out this incredible course.
Hi everyone, I'm Darren Clark, and I'm really excited to welcome you to this course on neuro inclusion. Over the years, I've founded several businesses, spoken on stages around the world, and work with organisations like Nike, Disney, Barclays and HSBC to help them build more inclusive workplaces. But the heart of everything I do comes back to one thing: helping people see neurodiversity not as a challenge to manage, but as a powerful part of human diversity. Throughout this course, we're going to explore practical ways to make workplaces fairer and more inclusive. From recruitment and onboarding to communication and well-being. It's not just about policies or processes, it's about culture. When teams understand and value how different people think, everyone benefits. My hope is that these lessons give you the insight, confidence and real-world tools to take back your own workplace.